I've just got back from Cumbria little more than an hour ago, but just as well, I was heading down to Cumbria. Indeed, of course, the news broke, of course, about the over 800 employees of P&O basically being fired and let go from their job without any notice whatsoever. And the boss of P&O even did this apparently in a video call. So this is an incredibly brutal way to go about it, and it just goes to show you what they went on to do with these 800 employees that they've fired. They've now trying to replace those permanent employees by essentially bringing in contract 0-hour workers to essentially be more cheap labor. And of course, this is what is meant whenever you hear these Brexiteers say by low tax, low regulation economy. They also want to get rid of the unions as well, because we are going to see a lot, especially I think in the coming weeks, the unions taking P&O to court for what they're doing. It is very clearly what they've said illegal. Whether it will be illegal or not is a bigger question, because one of the things that stopped, of course, this from happening was, well, we were in the European Union, and a very quirk of being in the European Union meant that we had workers' rights where businesses couldn't do this. Remember, P&O also have workers in France. This hasn't happened to them. Not one French worker has been sacked, but 800 British people, workers have gone under that. And that has been ultimately because of Brexit. So let's go diving into this to find out more about this. So before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel that way. Even if you do, just click the like and share button. So on with this. This comes from the Yorkshire Bylines with the title of P&O Ferries. Welcome to Johnson's low tax, low regulation, and union-free economy. There was a very remarkable unanimity on the front pages of the national newspapers on Friday, the 18th of March. With the exception, of course, of the Times, every one of them led on the shock news that DP World, the global logistics groups based in Dubai, had just days before abruptly fired 800 sea workers working for P&O Ferries. And all papers are strongly condemning the DP World's actions. On the previous morning, it had been clear that there was something going to be a bad news coming. And the very abrupt statement was issued by the company that all UK sailing had been suspended pending a major announcement. Only cargo and passengers on the Dover-Calais crossings were told then in turn to turn up, that they would be accommodated on alternative services. Later that day, P&O workers were then informed by a 3-minute Zoom announcement from the Human Resources Chief, Stephen Nee, that P&O vessels would be primarily crewed by third-party crew providers. And this is your final employment is today. The agreements on the 48-hour work week, placements for overtime and other conditions will all be torn up under all these new contracts. And DP had it all well planned out. A very covert operation in place to have all P&O ferries in ports in order to sack over 800 crew, including officers, with an immediate effect, while the agency workers were then positioned to take over the running of the ships after a very short training period. The global group has also had security staff on standby to move onto the ships once the announcement was then made. The Financial Times, of course, disclosed the International Ferry Management, the Malta-based group, and the first obviously registered on the 11th of February, was appointed to act as the new crew management company to replace the sacked P&O workers. The same report also states that Peter Hubert, the chief executive of P&O Ferries, has written to its remaining employees saying that the new arrangements would reduce costs by around 50%. And of course, the Department for Transport and officials have been told about the company's plans on Wednesday, but did not tell anyone, citing, quote, commercial sensitivity. So the government knew on Wednesday that this was coming and said nothing about it. And of course, the company badly miscalculated if it thought its operation would run smoothly. Sheffield MP Louise Haigh, the Shadow Secretary of State for Transport, made a very strong intervention in Parliament on Thursday afternoon, saying, of course, for Boris Johnson and the Conservative MPs, this outrageous behaviour by the global logistics group does pose some very uncomfortable questions. First, the actions of DP World fit partly into this new tactic of hire and rehire, used very widely by UK companies. Nautilus, the union along with the RTM involved in this dispute, said that some of its members had been approached by agencies to return and, of course, work for the P&O on cheaper agency contracts. Interestingly, of course, back in October last year, the Conservative MPs voted against the bill that would have banned this very practice. Secondly, of course, Boris Johnson was in the Middle East to try and plead for more oil to replace that from Russia. And of course, on Wednesday, the day the Ministry of Transport officials were told about the P&O plans, Johnson had just left the meetings in the United Arab Emirates with Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, that's how I say it, is the Emir of Dubai, and of course the billionaire head of state that owns and controls P&O. In a strong leader, The Guardian points out this. Mr. Johnson was forewarned about the company's plans just a day before they were enacted, and he left the meetings in the United Arab Emirates. He is not, and it is not a stretch to think that he was told while there. And after all, Sheikh Mohammed is the UAE's prime minister, and Mr. Johnson was seeking to help ease the rocketing oil prices. This would be a very Tory deal if he traded away workers' livelihoods for just a few barrels of oil. And of course, the media are also focusing on the very forensic details on the company that owns P&O Ferries, and it is not a pretty picture. Back in 1973, the Prime Minister Edward Heath used the phrase the unacceptable face of capitalism to describe the Tony Rowlands and Lahoro, who were using writ at large again here with DP World. The company was again hired by New Century Media, a PR firm that also used and advised oligarchs and Kremlin allies to clear up its image. The company owns about 1.46 million to the Merchant Navy Ratings pension fund that pays for the P&O Ferry staff pension, while they just spend around 147 million sponsoring golf's European tour. The UK government does want to privatise and deregulate, but the irony really that the 2 of the 8 container ports that Rishi Sunak has, quote, designated free ports, Southampton and London Gateway, end up now in the hands of state-owned DP World. And of course, P&O Ferries received about £10 million worth of furlough money and was also paid £1.4 million through a government emergency scheme to keep the freight flowing during the lockdowns of 2020. And of course, these are not the first cuts at P&O Ferries since DP World brought about the business in an early response to the pandemic. It made at least 1,100 employees redundant, of course, which at the time they represented just over a fifth of its workforce. And of course, P&O sackings on Thursday came at the very same month the parent company announced a very bumper profits of at least $896 million, or £751 million in 2021, up from $846 million in 2020. The RTM using, of course, is the traditional pet hate for the bloc of Tory-sponsored national newspapers. And the unanimity of the national newspapers on Friday, however, did not take long to break. After a demonstration in Dover when the Conservative MP Natalie Imfik was heckled by the Daily Telegraph-led attack on the RTM. The wave of support amongst politicians for the sacked P&O workers also highlights yet again the contradictions at the very heart of the Tory policies towards workers' rights and trade unions. For the European Research Group, the post-UK Brexit vision of the UK is a low-tax, low-regulation and union-free economy able to compete globally. And inevitably, that will mean a race to the bottom for working conditions, and this directly clashes with the very bluster about levelling up and promoting a high-wage, high-skill economy. But we know who Johnson will listen to as he desperately seeks support for his post-Partygate of this hard right group of Tory MPs. Really, though, this is a no-brainer. The actions by DP World showed utter contempt for workers' rights, employment law, and even the UK government by presenting it with a complete fait accompli. The Prime Minister could show that he really does back Britain by using all means possible to get the P&O workers reinstated. fines on the company, enforcing repayment of the funds which have been received, cancelling the Freeport contract at the Southampton and London Gateway. But of course, don't hold your breath though. A report cites an industry expert saying this: the government will be all bluster, but there is a very limited amount that they can do without a full-scale intervention. And of course, as we've said before, the current government is run by free market fundamentalist fanatics, and they are against any form whatsoever of any state intervention, either it be big or small. Unless it's companies they like, of course, then yeah, sure, have all this money. But that's where we are, unfortunately, and this is what we can expect, unfortunately, more of if these people do continue to get their way. This is what they want. They just want a complete race to the bottom. No workers' rights whatsoever. To have little notice for a company just to be able to go, yeah, they can all go, bring in all these contract workers that will work for, pennies on the dime. And if they start to get, raise more money or et cetera, well, we'll just fire and then rehire them. It's a very, very worrying time that we are walking into that allows all this. And remember, the Tories voted against a deal that would stop this kind of practice. They voted against it. So, unfortunately, that is the current government. And again, Boris could do something here. Again, if he's really, as he so claims, with all this bluster that he gives out, which again is what it is, that he is for like the working class and these working people, well, then he can step in and help these people. But he's not going to, because then that would upset the right wing of the Tory party, the very part of the party he wants to help keep sweet, to help keep him in power when Partygate comes, shall we say, crashing in to the back into Westminster politics, probably in a couple of weeks' time. So, with all that said, of course, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page. And of course, a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, we'll see you all next time.